One evening, as I was cruising down the road, I spotted this guy hitchhiking. Being the friendly and outgoing person that I am, I thought, why not give him a lift? I pulled over and rolled down the window. "Hey there, where are you headed?" I asked with a casual smile. The guy seemed a bit reserved, but still replied, "Just a few towns over, if that's not too much trouble." "No problem at all, hop in," I said cheerfully, unlocking the passenger's door as I did. He got in the car and buckled his seatbelt. I glanced at him and said, "I'm Jake, by the way. What's your name?" I noticed he hesitated before answering. "Call me Max." The conversation started off pretty normal. We talked about the weather, music, and random stuff like that. But as time went on, things took a strange turn. Max began dropping small details of things I felt like I shouldn't know about. "So Jake, do you consider yourself a good person?" he said, his voice laced with a hint of intrigue. I laughed, thinking of how random a question it was, and replied, "Sure, Max, I like to think I'm a decent person." "Ah, interesting," he murmured. "You know, Jake, I believe that goodness is just an illusion. We all have dark thoughts inside of us that we chose to ignore because we lie to ourselves about who we are every day." I don't remember the exact words that Max used, but I'm trying to remember as best as I can, and it was definitely something along those lines. I was completely caught off guard by his response. "Well, I mean, everyone has their flaws and struggles," I said, trying to maintain a positive outlook. He laughed again. This time, his voice had a completely different tone. "Oh, Jake, you don't understand. Beneath that friendly personality you're trying to keep with me because I'm a stranger, but deep down, we're all capable of terrible things. We have free will, and in this moment, we're free to do what we want." His words caused me to shift in my seat, as I was now extremely uncomfortable to be in my own car with this random guy. This conversation was taking a darker turn than I had expected. "But don't you think people can change?" I countered, trying to make him forget his train of thought with a new question. At this point, he looked me dead in the eyes and said, "I'm not changing anytime soon." It dawned on me that I never asked anything about him personally changing, and I realized that this conversation wasn't about his personal interest in me. It was about him and his problems. This was no ordinary hitchhiker. Max now had an edge to him that I hadn't noticed before. He was purposely pushing my boundaries, testing me to see how I would react. "Listen closely," he said. I could feel my heart pounding as he reached into his bag and pulled out a huge Bowie knife. I tried to keep my composure, but at this point, I had completely lost it. I had to think fast. "Listen closely. We both have free will. I choose to sit on the side of the road, waiting for some desperate lowlife like you to fall for my trap and pick me up, then proceed to lie about a town and identify that both don't exist. Now, it's time to see what choices you make." Before I could gather any thoughts on this new situation, the low fuel light illuminated on my dashboard. I didn't know what to do. Letting him know the car was out of gas could make him snap and do something right here and now, but it was also worth the risk of me being able to get to a gas station and find help. I made my decision and I spoke up. "Look, we need to find a gas station. The tank is nearly on empty. I'll allow you to get gas, but if you try anything like running or getting help, I will gut you from your head to your toes." He pulled up his phone and searched for the nearest gas station. I remember that we pulled into the parking lot of a Quick Trip, and I turned the car off. "Stay here," he warned firmly. "I'll fill up the tank, but don't try anything stupid." Then, he demanded my debit card to fill the tank, which I gave to him. As he got out of the car, I watched him through the back window while trying to scan the area for an opportunity for me to escape. As I stood near the car, I saw a huge coach bus pulling into the parking lot. The bus was filled with a bunch of high school or maybe college-aged kids who looked like they had just played a basketball game. I saw this as my big chance to get away from him while he was pumping gas on the opposite side of the car. Many of the kids were now getting off the bus to go inside the store, and I quickly opened the car door quietly and slipped out, trying my best to go over and blend in with the group of excited kids getting off the bus. I didn't want him to notice me leaving, so I tried to act like I was just another adult with the kids. The kids were laughing and talking loudly, which made it easier for me to go unnoticed. With my heart pounding in my chest, I walked briskly, trying to keep up with the kids, while keeping an eye on the gas station. As I moved through the crowd, I heard him scream suddenly, "Hey!" I quickly ducked through the door and got inside the gas station. There was commotion everywhere. There had been a bunch of people inside and out of the gas station at that point. I didn't look back, and just kept speed walking, and once I reached the back of the gas station, I knew I was in the clear. Then, I told multiple people to call the police, and that there was a man with a knife in the parking lot. Quickly, an employee was able to go to the doors and lock them, and luckily the man hadn't attempted to go inside yet. The police came quickly. They were really nice to me and made sure that I was safe, as well as everybody else. However, when they got there, the man was gone. He had taken my car and drove away. Police promised to keep looking for him, but he and my car were never found. Late at night, while driving home in the rain, I found myself on a quiet county road. The storm was very aggressive, and it was downpouring, so it was hard to see while driving. I was moving at a sort of slower pace because of this. As I was driving around a corner, I suddenly saw a man standing by the side of the road. Like I said, it was raining the hardest it had all year, and I wanted to make sure this guy was okay and not freezing himself to death. It would have sucked if he had a long way to walk wherever he was headed to. I slowed my car down to a stop, rolled down my window, and called out to the man, trying to understand why he was there. However, he didn't respond to me at all. Instead, he walked slowly towards the nearby ditch, as if he was lost in his own thoughts and unaware of me and didn't hear a single thing I said. I raised my voice, asking him once again what he was doing. The heavy rain and thunder made it difficult to know if he had heard me, but I kept on trying to get his attention. Still, he remained silent, disappearing into the literal darkness of the ditch. Confused on if I should follow him, I hesitated to get out of my car. I was raised with grandparents, and they always taught me to make sure that others are okay, so it was a no-brainer that I should go see if the guy was all right. After he vanished out of my sight, I couldn't stop feeling that something was off. I decided to step out of my truck and check and see if he needed any help. Rain was pouring down, making everything blurry and loud. I walked a few steps into the ditch, calling out to the man, hoping that he would respond. By now, I could barely see at all because of the downpour, and yet again, I only heard silence, other than the rain and storm. No answer, no movement. About 30 seconds of waiting with no signs of him, I finally decided to head back to my truck and continue my way home. I thought there was no way the guy didn't hear me, and he must have just not wanted my help. I even walked a little ways into the ditch, but without seeing him, I returned to my truck. Driving back, my mind was filled with questions. I couldn't stop asking myself what the guy was doing out there. Was he in trouble? I really wanted to know. It was a strange situation for me to have been in. After about 30 minutes, I finally got home, and I started to feel a bit better at that point. I parked my truck and stepped out, but when I did, I noticed movement out of the corner of my eye. Then, out hopped from my truck, the same man who I had encountered in the ditch earlier. My heart pounded in my chest, and I started to back up with a panic, not knowing what to do. Without thinking, I sprinted towards my front door, desperate to get inside before the man could catch up. My adrenaline was pumping as I fumbled with the keys. I somehow managed to slip through the door just in time, locking it behind me. The man made multiple attempts to get inside by trying the door. He then pounded on the door, yelling me to let him in. I dialed the police, my voice trembling as I relayed the situation to the dispatcher. They assured me that help was on the way. Meanwhile, the man continued to bang on the door. Then, out of seemingly nowhere, the man gave up and disappeared, running off into the woods nearby. A short time later, the police arrived. I shared the details of the incident with arriving officers, and they went out searching for the man, but never found anything. I guessed that he had got in the back of the bed of my truck when I was in the ditch looking for him. It really creeps me out knowing he was with me the entire ride home. At the end of the day, I'm just glad I'm all right, though. This story takes place after a long night of work that went into the wee hours of the morning. I had left and was headed home down the highway to be on my way home. It was almost early in the morning, but there was still about an hour of darkness left before the sun started to come up, so there was almost nobody out on the road. It was quiet and relaxing. After about 30 minutes into the drive, I looked up into my rearview mirror, and there was a single car with its headlights coming in super fast. I paid it no mind, assuming it was just another person on their way home from work like me. But then I had noticed the guy was going at an alarmingly fast speed, like at least 20 over, and he was directly behind me. I was in the right lane, so I expected him to go around me, and I still didn't pay it much attention. But when it looked like he was directly behind me, all of a sudden, with a ton of aggression, he veered to the side, nearly colliding with the back end of my car. Now, we were side to side for a brief moment, and when I looked over, he flipped me off, screaming, but I couldn't hear him because I had music on in my car. To even my own surprise, this made me extremely mad. Who does this guy think he is, speeding around me like that, and then flipping me off? I had a long day at work, and this was the last thing that I needed. I honked at him to retaliate, but this only made him more mad, and he honked back at me and then flipped me off once again before flooring it and speeding away even faster. I was just relieved to see that he was now gone. But here's where things get really interesting. Just as he sped away, leaving a trail of exhaust fumes behind him from his truck, about a minute went by. I then noticed him up on the road again. I was now gaining on him. His speed has slowed down significantly, and initially I had this crazy idea to pass the guy and give him the finger back. But I got a really bad feeling as my car started to approach his. I didn't know what the man would do. It seemed like he was intentionally slowing down. Maybe this guy was dangerous and would try to crash me or something like that. I thought better of it before I went around the guy. Instead, I slowed my vehicle down. I looked back at the speedometer, and now he was going about 40 miles per hour, and I was probably going about 50. I realized this guy was definitely waiting for me to pull up next to him, and luckily there was an exit that I could take last minute. So I did, and without thinking, I pulled off when it was too late for the man to slow down and take the exit. After I took that exit, I pulled over for a minute to make sure that the driver was long gone. I took a deep breath and merged back onto the freeway. As I drove along, trying to calm down, I noticed flashing lights in the distance. I thought to myself, not again with another crazy driver. The flashing lights of police cars ended up zooming past me, sirens blaring and lights flashing. I continued my drive home, never seeing where the police cars had gone, and never seeing that crazy guy's car either. But the next morning, not long after I woke up, I heard the chilling story from the news. I found out the exact man who had angrily sped past me had been caught by the police the previous night after a brief chase. He had been wanted for killing somebody earlier that evening. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That same guy who flipped me off, and I had almost passed on the road. What if I would have tried to pass him and flip him off? Was he slowing down to do something to me?